It was a cold winter night. Emily had moved into an old house where she lived alone. The history and decor of the house had attracted her, but strange events began to occur at night. At first, they were small things, doors closing on their own, creaking sounds, eerie shadows. But one night, Emily woke up in her bedroom in a strange way. An old mirror in the middle of the room had started glowing on its own. As Emily approached the mirror, she was confronted with a terrifyingly distorted image. The mirror began to tell her an old story. The story narrated a tragic death that occurred years ago involving the owner of the mirror. Emily thought this incident hinted at the presence of an old ghost that left its mark on the history of the house. However, that night, the mysterious presence in the house became more apparent. Emily saw shadows converging and moving, and she could feel the restless energy within the house. One night, Emily woke up and went down to the basement. In the basement, she found a forgotten room hidden in an old attic. The room was filled with dusty old belongings, and in one corner, there was a rusty trunk. When Emily opened the trunk, she found an old diary and a series of old photographs inside. The diary contained the story of the restless spirit of the previous owner. Emily realized that the disturbing events in the house were connected to this spirit story. However, this discovery seemed to anger the spirit rather than appease it. Emily began to feel the presence of the ghost all over the house. Shadows, sounds, and horrifying reflections in the mirror seemed to pull her into a nightmare. Eventually, Emily decided to leave the house, but as she exited the front door, it quickly closed behind her, trapping her inside. The anger and restlessness of the ghost within the house had made her the prisoner of this dark home forever. In a small town, there was a mysterious tale surrounding an old and abandoned mansion by the lakeside. The owner of the mansion had disappeared years ago, entangled in a series of mysterious deaths, leading the townsfolk to believe that the mansion was cursed. A group of young people from the town, gathering their courage, decided to enter this mansion. When night fell, they quietly opened the mansion's door and entered. As they roamed through the corridors, strange sounds filled the air. Footsteps, labored breaths, and even distant screams echoed. Upon entering a room, they found an old photo album on a table. The photos depicted the happier days of the mansion's former owner, but as they turned the pages, the smiling faces darkened. Suddenly, the room's lights began to flicker, and the faces from the photographs seemed to materialize around the room. Shadows enveloped the group, and the melancholic cries of the former owner echoed in their ears. In a panic, they tried to escape, but the inside of the mansion seemed like a labyrinth. Doors would close suddenly, and corridors would change. As the group rushed from room to room, shadows followed them. Finally, the young people found themselves trapped in a room and the door locked on its own. The room filled with darkness, and they felt a presence breathing down their necks. Whispers emanated from the walls, and suddenly the ghost of the former owner appeared in the middle of the room. The ghost declared, "My curse will endure forever. You cannot set me free because this mansion is now my tomb," and reached out towards the terrified youngsters. The next day, as the townsfolk passed by the mansion, they heard strange sounds emanating from within. From that day on, they avoided the mansion, and it remained one of the town's most feared and abandoned structures. Once upon a time, in a small town, there was an old house shrouded in the darkness of the night. The townsfolk had heard rumors that the house was filled with ghosts. However, a brave group of young people decided to find out if these rumors were true. One night, these young individuals sneaked into the old house. As soon as they opened the door, a cold wind swept through, and the door closed behind them, trapping them inside. Nevertheless, the young ones pressed on without succumbing to fear. As they roamed inside the house, they began to hear strange sounds. Footsteps, whispers, and eerie laughter echoed through the halls, yet no one was in sight. Eventually, they reached a room and found an old mirror in the center. When they looked into the mirror, they saw their lifeless bodies reflected back at them. In that moment, terror seized them and they tried to escape, but the door was locked. The temperature inside the room dropped rapidly, and the young people could feel the presence of ghosts surrounding them. Suddenly, shadows merged, and a figure emerged. This figure resembled an ancient spirit, seemingly from the town's past. The spirit informed the young ones that they were cursed due to their past sins. As the youngsters struggled to escape, they were slowly drawn in by the hands of the ghosts. In that old house, the townsfolk heard the screams of the lost young ones, never to return again. The old house was now remembered as the town's most terrifying and cursed place, and nobody dared to approach it. The ghosts, however, continued to roam around the old house at night, continuing to frighten those who ventured near. Subscribe to my channel and don't forget to turn on notifications to see you in the next story.